Hello and welcome to another MiTunes podcast right here at manxradio.com.
Marc Tyley, the nation's station, Manx Radio.
Where do you start with a guest who's been a racing driver, run massive events, radio celebrity, world of politics, fine musician? And there's so much more we could say about Stu Peters, but I'll stop there because he's already slightly embarrassed. Stu Peters, MHK, welcome to MiTunes.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Mark. It's marvellous to be here again.
Well, it's lovely to have you back in the old Manx Radio.
At the old radio station up on the hill.
Here we are, high on the head, in Broadcasting Hut. But I want to go back.
Yes.
I want to start going back because I mentioned a few things there.
Yes.
But realistically, there was a huge wodge of your time when you were involved in events and putting on great big sort of arena things.
Yeah.
And this is something that maybe a lot of our listeners have no idea that's what you used to do for a living.
Okay. Well, I think it was round about 1980, maybe 1981, I left Pluto recording studios in Manchester, where I'd been a director, and set up my own firm to do corporate events and things like that, and radio commercials. Used to do lots of radio commercials, and I kind of got into making what we used to call audio-visual presentations, which was 2 slide projectors synchronized together with a cassette tape, and that kind of developed. And then microcomputers came in, and we were able to control 12 projectors and do all sorts of clever stuff. And I got into bigger and bigger conferences and sales events and things like that. And then I think in 1988, I won a new account, which was one of these multi-level network marketing firms. And they did big rah-rah conferences. And the first one that I did was at the Central Hotel in Glasgow for about 200 people. Within 12 months, we were doing places like Wembley Arena for 7,000 people. And the fortunate thing was that both I and my client, or the manager director of the client company, were big rock fans. And so he would get videos of the latest Genesis live shows and things like that, and this is before streaming. And he'd say, "Oh, I just saw these moving lights. Can we have some of those?" And it was great. So we used to do, and I always enjoyed the theatricality of it. And it was all very sort of things going on stage and big sound cues and big light cues and things like that. And so, we're doing massive shows. Did all the arenas, did London Arena, NEC Arena, Wembley Arena. I mean, before it got that big, we were doing the theatres. So we were doing places like the Opera House in Blackpool. So it was all big scale stuff. It was, for corporate work, it was quite unique.
Now, not to sound too like Mrs. Merton, the late Mrs. Merton, that's lovely, Stu. What went wrong?
Well, unfortunately, that client went bust in a big way.
Right.
And it kind of took me with them because they ended up owing me quite a chunk of money. And I got to the point when they went bust, and I thought, I've just been working places like Wembley Arena. Do I really want to go back to the local Novotel doing a sales conference for 20 insurance reps? And I really didn't. No. So I thought, no, time to reinvent.
You have reinvented yourself many times, it's fair to say. And we're going to talk about the big reinvention when you became an MHK a little later on in the week. But for now, let's talk about music, because your love of music is well known across Manx Radio and before that. So where do we start the musical journey for your MiTunes?
Well, what I'd like to do, Mark, if I may, is that I've chosen music for each of the 4 days, and there is a common link between these songs. And people who used to listen to my late show, I did talk about it once, and they might remember what the link is. I mean, I've got a fairly eclectic mix of musical things that I enjoy. As a kid, as a teenager, I was a big Deep Purple fan. And I saw them a number of times in Manchester, and they just sort of shuffle on stage in jeans and T-shirts and tune up and then start to play. And then I think in 1973 I saw Queen on their very first headline tour in Manchester at the Opera House. Well, the Opera House wasn't a place that rock bands played. And I went with a pal. I'd been dragged along to this thing. We sat up in the gods right at the back. And Freddie Mercury took to the stage, and it was outrageously theatrical.
Yeah.
And that kind of changed my taste, and obviously I got into the music as well. And then later into Pink Floyd. So I think I probably prefer rock music. But then when I was doing the radio programmes, I also realised that I actually enjoy pop music.
Why Elton for your first choice?
He is a remarkable performer. He's a superb songwriter. I saw Elton John live as well at the NEC once, just him and a piano, which was a bit of a disappointment because I wanted to see him with the full band, but it was just Elton on one of his farewell tours. I think he's wonderful. I've got various records still on vinyl which have almost worn out the grooves on, and Goodbye Yellow Brick Road was my favourite ever Elton John album. But I realised that I'm sort of going back now to a lot of artists where I kind of missed them the first time round. And with Elton John, I know all the songs on Yellow Brick Road, but this song that we're going to play today is one that I think I probably only became really aware of it when it was used in either a film or a commercial, TV commercial or something like that. And it's just magical, and the video for it is great as well. So first record is Tiny Dancer by Elton.
Blue jean baby, LA lady, seamstress for the band, pretty eye, pirate smile, you marry a music man, ballerina, you must have seen her dancing in the sand. Now she's in me, always with me, tiny dancer in my hand. Jesus freaks out in the street, handing tickets out for gone, turning back, she just laughs. The boulevard is not that bad. Piano man, he makes a stand in their auditorium, looking on. She sings the songs, the words she knows, tune she hums. But oh, how it feels so real, lying here with no one near, only you, and you can hear me when I say it softly. of landing. You had a busy day today. All because of tiny dancers. Count the headlights on the highway. Lay me down in sheets of linen. You had a busy day today.
My guest on MiTunes all this week is Stu Peters, MHK. We've talked about putting on massive events and people going bust and really dragging you down with them. That was yesterday's adventure. Today, I want to talk about Stu Peters, the pop star, because every now and then on social media appears a photograph of you in a glam rock band. And it's honestly, dear listener, it has to be seen to be believed. I'll try and find it and get it onto the Facebook page, if you don't mind.
No.
Because you were a glam rocker, weren't you?
Well, I had an afro as
Exactly.
well. I had a curly perm.
Exactly.
And it wasn't like a Kevin Keegan curly perm because I decided to brush it. So it was a huge sort of a perm that I had at the time. And yeah, we were, I think I mentioned yesterday that I really enjoyed the early David Bowie stuff. So the Ziggy Stardust era. This was the Ziggy Stardust era. This was the mid-70s, and I was in a little band in Manchester. We did covers, and we used to do quite a lot of Bowie stuff. And so we decided to do the whole shtick. So we all had stage wear made.
Yes.
And we used to go on with face makeup on and all the rest of it, and glitter.
It's a remarkable era. So what were you playing in the band?
I was playing drums then.
Right.
Yeah, I was the drummer.
And what were they called?
It sounds stupid now, but the band was called Microwave. And at the time, this is before microwave ovens, and microwave was like a really high-tech word.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to come over as this sort of space-age, high-tech thing, and now people just think about ovens.
Yeah, a bunch of ovens on stage going ping. That'd be the sort of signature tune.
Yeah. So from Manchester, we'd do gigs in London and up towards Scotland, in the Lake District and stuff like that. Over in Yorkshire, we never did any gigs locally, and the average fee was about 50 quid a night, which we would spend on petrol and renting a van and stuff. So there was never any money in it. But, it's the stuff that you do when you're 20.
So you weren't sort of a prophet in your hometown. You moved away to play. Was that a strategy, or was it just that no one would look at you locally?
No, we got a manager stroke agent, and he just got us the gigs because we were playing just sort of church hall gigs and youth clubs and things around Manchester to half a dozen spotty kids. And this guy came to see us once, and he said, "Oh, boys, I can give you lots of work, boys. Stick with me, and I'll just take 25%, but I'll make you stars."
Yeah, fair dues. And days in the van, and then get the clothes on and the makeup and ready to go. Did it go down well?
Oh, yeah, it was great. Although I've got one memory if I've got time. Which
Yes, of course, yeah.
We were booked on... He phoned us one day and he said, "Boys, I've got a great thing for you this coming weekend." He said, "Instead of just one gig, you can make some money at this." He said, "Because it's a Friday night gig, it's a Saturday matinee gig, it's a Saturday night gig, it's a Sunday matinee, Sunday night, all in the same area of Yorkshire. It's like a circuit." And he said, "I've got you booked into all those, and you get 50 quid a night for each of them or whatever, so you can make a few quid." Great. So we borrowed the van, which is what we always used to do, and we went out, and the first gig was at Old Ghoul Working Men's Club, which was one of these places near Scunthorpe. It's the old-fashioned sort of miners' club type thing, where there was a huge concert room, enormous, and it was all trestle tables. And so the corner of the room was a tiny little stage, and behind it was a triangular dressing room that was the size of a lift. And so we got changed in there, put all the gear on, came out to this raucous start, which was Hang On To Yourself by David
Oh,
Bowie.
lovely.
And as a man, everybody in the room stood up and walked out.
Had the pies arrived?
No.
Was it one of those occasions?
No. That would have been a godsend, I think, because it might have made them smile a bit. But no, they all hated us completely and disappeared. And so the concert secretary came out and he said, right, lads, there you go. There's £20. He says, that's you done now. I said, well, surely you knew what we were. It doesn't matter, you've seen how you've gone down, lads, so we'll give you some money. We'll not be unfair about it. There's your £20, off you go. So we went to the next gig on the Saturday, and the concert secretary at the next gig said, oh, you've been cancelled for the whole weekend because you died last night at Goole.
Yeah.
So we were stuck in Yorkshire with no money, no food or anything, and barely the petrol to get home.
Life on the road with Stu Peters. I love it. Let's have another piece of music. Who have we got today?
I thought we'd have, and this again is linked, so all these 4 pieces of music are linked. Yep. Today is Carly Simon, who I've always been slightly in love with, and this is her famous
You and me both,
song.
if I may just drop that in.
Yeah.
Yes.
You're So Vain.
Perfect.
You walked into the party like you were walking onto a yacht. Your hat strategically dipped below one eye. Your scarf, it was apricot. You had one eye in the mirror as you watched yourself cover out. And all the girls dreamed that they'd be your partner. They'd be your partner. And you're so vain. You probably think this song is about you. You're so vain. I'll bet you think this song is about you. Don't you? Don't you? Oh, you had me several years ago when I was still quite naive. When you said that we made such a pretty pair and that you would never leave. But you gave away the things you loved, and one of them was me. I had some dreams, they were clouds in my coffee, clouds in my coffee. And you're so vain. You probably think this song is about you. You're so vain. I'll bet you think this song is about you. Don't you? Don't you? Don't you?
My guest on MiTunes all this week is Stu Peters, MHK, who went down a storm in certain clubs across the north of England, not so well in Yorkshire, as we heard yesterday. If you missed all this, by the way, there's a podcast coming on Thursday afternoon. You might get a prize just for listening. But I want to talk today about getting you to the Isle of Man, because you say you grew up in Manchester.
Yes.
Isle of Man's quite away from there.
Yes.
How did that happen?
I had an uncle who lived here in the 60s. So as a small child, I'd been over for a couple of weeks to spend time with my Uncle Bill, who had butcher shops. So there was always a sort of a link between me and the Isle of Man. And I'm, as you know, I'm not a particularly spiritual person, but the Isle of Man always has felt like home to me, more so than Manchester for some strange reason, and I've spent 40 odd years in Manchester. So when I learnt to fly, I used to come over here, brought the kids over, we'd have long weekends here or whatever, or holidays. So I'd always got some sort of a link with the Isle of Man. When the business went wrong in Manchester in sort of 95, 96, my partner at the time, girlfriend at the time, said, well, you know, if you're going to start again from scratch kind of a thing and be a script writer or whatever, do you need to be in Manchester? Because it might be an opportunity to have a complete fresh start, break from all this and start somewhere else. And so we thought, okay, and the Castle Mona was still open and they were advertising for a housekeeper. So she applied for that, got the job and said, you know, do you fancy it? And I said, yeah, absolutely, why not? So we moved to the Isle of Man.
So you didn't come over to the Isle of Man to join Manx Radio. That was later.
No, that was later, yeah.
So let's fast forward to getting onto the radio.
Well, I used to love listening to late night radio back in Manchester because they always had shock jocks on. So when I came here, I thought that Manx Radio was very cute, but it didn't have anything that was sort of edgy like that. So I got in touch with the MD and said, you know, I've done a bit of hospital radio. I'm not an experienced professional at radio, but I've done a bit of hospital radio. So I reckon I could do a late night show, you know, any chance of a job. Oh, yes, absolutely, yeah, come in and see us. So over a period of about 2 years, I came in to see various people at Manx Radio, passed from pillar to post, and everybody said, oh, yeah, marvellous. Oh, yes, yeah, we'll do that, definitely. And it never happened. So I got a bit cranky about it and sent the MD a letter to say, if you want me to go away and die, then just say so, because I'll do that rather than keep knocking at your door. He said, no, he said, we'd like you to have one of your compatriots. He said, Stu Lowe has just been made programme controller. And, you know, you guys speak the same language. He said, so come and see him and he'll see if he can find you something. So that was how I got in. And at the time, it was when we had Kick FM at the weekends, which was like the young station, I suppose. So I started off doing a weekly show on Kick FM. Didn't disgrace myself terribly. And so Stu Lowe said to me once, he said, right, we'd like you to do the Manning line. And here's the book, and here's the programme code and all the rest of it. We'd like you to do that for a fortnight while Andy's on holiday or whatever. And so I used to do that. And I think at one stage I covered virtually all the programmes on Manx Radio as the holiday man.
Yeah. And then you were in.
And then 2003, the MD phoned me up and he said, I want to see you. So I thought, oh, no. You know, he's going to give me a kick in the backside for something. He said, you know, I wanted to offer you a job in the newsroom. So that was the start of it, really.
That was it. Well, it's been a joyous time of Stu Peters on the airwaves. Fondly remembered by many. And you never say never again.
Still alive.
Never say never. We're going to talk politics tomorrow, but let's have another piece of music.
Okay, well, again, this is linked. If people want to think about what that link is, what will we do? Really tell people what it was on Thursday?
The podcast.
On the podcast.
They'll have to come back, you see. This is the mechanism to increase my podcast revenue from 0.0 pence to 0.2 pence.
Yeah. Cynical. Good. Well, I think we will offer a prize of, I don't know.
Self-respect?
Self-respect.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
And a Manx Radio mug.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll sort that out.
So today's tune, Mark, with your permission, is a David Bowie song. Talked about Bowie earlier on. Space Oddity.
Ground control to Major Tom. Ground control to Major Tom. Take your protein pills and put your helmet on. Ground control to Major Tom. 7, 6. Commencing countdown, engines on. 3, 2. Check ignition and may God's love be with you. This is ground control to Major Tom. You've really made the grade, and the papers want to know whose shirts you wear. Now it's time to leave the capsule if you dare. This is Major Tom to ground control. I'm stepping through the door, and I'm floating in a most peculiar way, and the stars look very different today. For here am I sitting in a tin can.
I will start today's episode of MiTunes with a question. How does a fast car driver, a pilot, an events manager and a fantastic technician across all the technology, a member of a glam rock band, a radio presenter, end up as an MHK? Well, let's try and find out, shall we? My guest this week on MiTunes, and what a journey and a voyage and all those words are rightfully there for Stu Peters, MHK. Now, were you politically sort of active prior to this momentous decision?
Well, I was involved in politics, I suppose, from 2003 when I joined Manx Radio as a senior broadcast journalist. And the job, when I first took it on, was to present and produce Mandate in the morning, if you remember Mandate. So 7:30 to 8:30 every morning on FM was Mandate, which was, hard news and current affairs. So at that stage, I kind of had to brush up on all that and start to take an interest in politics. Before that, I'd got very little interest at all, to be honest. So that was the start of it. And over the years, especially doing chat shows and things like that and phone-in programmes, people often used to phone in and say, you talk more sense than all these politicians put together, you ought to stand for politics. And I used to say to people, yeah, but I don't work well in groups, and I don't like committees and I don't like meetings, and that's what politics is all about. So I don't think I'm suitable for it. But I got to that stage where I was getting old, I was getting to retirement age, and I thought I'd have one last sort of roll of the dice and have a go, because the election in 2021 was coming up. And I thought, well, that would be a fantastic adventure, really, to end things on. And so I stood for politics and amazed to be elected.
You were surprised? Pleasantly surprised, obviously.
Yeah, pleasantly surprised. I knew that I stood a chance because just talking to people on the doorsteps. And I think, let's be realistic about it. I think it's because I'd already got a profile as a Manx radio presenter. And a fairly outspoken one. So when I was knocking on doors, an awful lot of people were saying, oh, we like what you say. So people knew me before. But it was surprising to be elected, and joyous as well. And people said, what's your plan B if you're not elected? Well, plan B was to retire.
Yeah. I've heard from a lot of people, prior to setting this interview up with you, that you respond to them as constituents to their MHK. You are very much rooted in your constituency, and if people come to you, you'll do your best to sort them out.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Well, that's the enjoyable part of the job. And you can't always help people, and sometimes people have got, too high an expectation of the power that their MHK's got. But if you can help somebody through a bit of a problem, that's the joyous part of the job. The committee meetings and the general meetings and all the rest of it is a bit turgid, to be honest. But the helping people is the primary part of the job, and you are a constituency MHK first and foremost.
And in this time that we've been going through, cost of living crisis and all that, I guess you've had a lot of people coming to you with very real problems.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. But it's often planning things, people not doing things that they're supposed to do, and trouble with getting service from departments and being sort of poo-pooed by civil servants or whatever. So, an awful lot of those things, I can pick up a phone and have a word and try and smooth things out. And it's, that's very satisfying.
You mentioned earlier in the week that you've known about the Isle of Man. You've had a connection with it for much longer than you've lived here.
Yeah.
What sort of state do you see it in right now? How's it doing?
I think the Isle of Man's doing fine, and it disappoints me when I see all these posts on Facebook from these people who think that things are worse than they've ever been before. In all my years of working at Manx Radio, 20 years pretty much of covering politics and current affairs, every single administration gets the same thing. Oh, this is the worst government that we've ever had. And it's just disappointing. People don't look at the good things. Yes, we've got a cost of living crisis, which is unprecedented in modern years. Interest rates were at virtually zero for so long that people got used to that. But now that prices are going up, it's a big shock to an awful lot of people. So there are problems, and people say, well, yeah, but look at the Liverpool landing stage. You just throw money at things like that. No wonder we can't fix the potholes. Yeah, but, nobody goes into, and this isn't just politicians, this is civil servants as well, nobody goes into these schemes thinking that they're ever going to overspend on them. But it's not a Manx problem. You've only got to look at the HS2 thing in the UK.
Yes.
If you want to know about overspends, and people... Armchair critics are very good at saying, oh, well, I would never allow that to happen if I was in. You can't stop it from happening, is the sad truth. And if you said to a contractor, we want you to build a Liverpool landing stage, we've got a budget of 35 million quid, sign here to say that that's what you'll do it for. nobody would sign the contract. Nothing, a spade would never go into the ground to start a project like that under those terms.
And look at the rising price of materials, etc., that we've had in the last few years,
COVID,
etc., etc. Ministerial duties.
Yes.
Do you feel called to be a minister?
No. No, I don't. But I think that's a real self-realisation, I think. And I did kind of toy with it at one stage, with the concept of it, but I've realised that you really do need to be a politician for a good while to be an effective minister. You've got to have that institutional memory, I think. So I can talk to people like Tim Crookall, who's just taken over in DOI, and he will remember meetings that were held, 5-10 years ago or whatever, committees that were set up, reports that were produced and all the rest of it. And I don't know about those things, or if I do, I know very little about them. So I think that an effective minister has got to have that sort of institutional memory, and also be better at playing with others.
Very, very honest answer. Final piece of music for the week, sir.
This is a band that I know very little about, but it is the most fantastic piece of music. I used to enjoy playing it very much on the Old Manx radio back in the day, and it's Drops of Jupiter by Train.
Lovely. Don't forget, tune into the podcast, which will be available in half an hour or so, and we will give you the results of the music quiz you've been set, linking all of Stu's pieces, all of Stu's choices together. But for now, Stu Peters, MHK, thank you for coming on to MiTunes.
I thank you.
Now that she's back in the atmosphere with drops of Jupiter in her head, she acts like summer and walks like rain, reminds me that there's a time to change. Since the return of her stay on the moon, she listens like spring and she talks like June. But tell me, did you sail across the sun? Did you make it to the Milky Way to see the lights all faded and that heaven is overrated? Tell me, did you fall for a shooting star, one without a permanent scar, and then you missed me while you were looking for yourself out there? Now that she's back from that soul vacation, tracing her way through the constellation, she checks out Mozart while she does Chavo, reminds me that there's room to grow. Now that she's back in the atmosphere, I'm afraid that she might think of me as plain old Jane Doe, a story about a man who was too afraid to fly, so he never did land. But tell me, did the wind sweep you off your feet? Did you finally get the chance to dance along the light of day and head back to the Milky Way? But tell me, did Venus blow your mind? Was it everything you wanted to find, and then you missed me while you were looking for yourself out there? Can you imagine no love, fried deep fried chicken? Your best friend always sticking up for you, even when I know you're wrong. Can you imagine no first dance, freeze dried romance, 5-hour phone conversation, the best soy latte that you ever had in me? But tell me, did the wind sweep you off your feet? Did you finally get the chance to dance along the light of day and head search all the Milky Way. And tell me, did you sail across the sun? Did you make it to the Milky Way to see the lights all faded and that heaven is overrated? And tell me, did you fall for a shooting star, one without a permanent scar, and then you missed me while you were looking for yourself? Na 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 na. And then you finally get the chance to dance along the light of day. And then you fall for a shooting star, fall for a shooting star. And now you're lonely, looking for yourself out there.
Drops of Jupiter, Train. He's still with me. Stu Peters, MHK, who also plays bass, you know, in a fine band called Stalking Heads. Anyway, Stu, thanks for hanging around for the podcast, because it's time to reveal just what the connection between Elton John's Tiny Dancer, Carly Simon, You're So Vain, David Bowie, Space Oddity, Drops of Jupiter, Train. I hadn't got a clue until you pointed me in the right direction, so explain all.
The musical arrangements, the orchestral arrangements, were all done by a fella called Paul Buckmaster, who died, I think, about 5-6 years ago, sadly. But he worked with a huge number of artists, not just in pop music. He did film scores and all the rest of it. But he's just got a marvellous sense of musicality. So if you listen to Drops of Jupiter, the orchestral arrangement behind that is stupendous. And people think you can just bang an orchestra on a pop song and it works, and it really doesn't. I mean, I love Simon and Garfunkel, for example, but if you listen to the orchestral arrangements behind them, they are just weedy, thin sort of violins that don't really do anything. They just fill a blank in the music. Whereas Paul Buckmaster's stuff, you could listen to it on its own without the song that it's there to support.
Well, I'm going to go back and listen to all those tunes again. Seeing as this is the podcast, and seeing as we have a very select membership of the podcast posse, I'm going to play a tune from us. This is the legendary Stalking Heads with special guest Davy Knowles, recorded for a fundraiser in Peel in 2011 it would have been. So it's you and me.
Yeah.
Got Jim Horton on the drums.
Yes.
You got Stevie Gray on the keys, Jason on harmonica.
Yeah.
I'll be Jason Roberts. I'm on guitar, and we got a special guest, Davy Knowles, on guitar. So we'll, yes, do you remember it?
I think we gave him a bit of a start in his career, Davy Knowles. I think he ought to be more grateful to us than
I think it's a huge leg up. And let's finish with this. Stu, it's been brilliant. Down at the Doctor's.
A late show, I still feel alive. I want a place to go, round about 5. Down to the doctor, down to the doctor, down to the doctor, make me feel good, alright. Everybody needs a shot of R&B, so come on down to my surgery. Down to the doctor, down to the doctor, to the doctor, make me feel good. All right, take it. Jason. Come here, baby, I won't do you no harm. I just wanna shoot some rock and roll in your arm. Down down to the doctor, down to the doctor, down to the doctor, make me feel good. Everybody needs a shot of R&B, so come on down to my surgery. Down to the doctor, down to the doctor, sit down to the doctor, make me feel good. All right.
Talking heads on a Stu Peters podcast. Remarkable. I'm Marc Tyley. Don't forget to join me whenever you can for the morning show. We're on from 9:30 to 12, Monday to Friday. And keep coming back here, manxradio.com, for more podcasts. They're popping up every day.